If you spend even a little time around money discussions, you will eventually run into the same tired argument that refuses to die: Bitcoin versus gold. As if they are standing in a boxing ring, waiting for a referee to declare which one is the real store of value, while the loser is politely escorted out of financial history. This debate sounds exciting, but it already starts with the wrong assumption. It assumes that money is a competition where only one thing is allowed to work at a time. In reality, money is more like a toolbox, and arguing whether a hammer is better than a screwdriver mostly tells you that someone has never tried to fix anything. Right now, this discussion is louder than usual because gold prices are sitting near historic highs, and suddenly everyone is acting surprised, as if gold just woke up one morning and decided to be relevant again. At the same time, Bitcoin is still here, still running, still being used, and still confusing people who expected it to behave like a lottery ticket instead of a long-term system. So let's slow this down and remove the drama, because neither Bitcoin nor gold is broken, outdated, or winning some imaginary war. They are simply doing different jobs, and the confusion mostly comes from people expecting them to do the same thing at the same speed. Bitcoin is one of the most radical financial ideas ever created. It's digital, global, decentralized, and does not require permission from a bank, a government, or a guy in a suit who tells you your transfer will arrive sometime next week. It was built for a world that lives online and expects systems to work at any hour of the day. Gold, on the other hand, is the financial equivalent of someone who has seen everything and is no longer impressed. It has survived empires, wars, currency collapses, and more political experiments than anyone can count. Gold does not care about trends, narratives, or your opinion. It just exists, quietly reminding the world that value does not need software updates. And here is where beginners often get confused. They look at Bitcoin and gold and expect them to behave the same way because they both get described as stores of value. That label sounds simple, but it hides an important detail. Look, they both store value, but they do it in completely different ways. Bitcoin is all about the tech, its scarcity enforced by code, and a deep trust in math rather than some bank. Gold, on the other hand, is old school. It relies on physical reality and thousands of years of humans basically just nodding and saying, yeah, this shiny rock is worth something. At the end of the day, both approaches work. They just speak different languages. Bitcoin is speaking the language of the future, while gold is still speaking the language of survival. Right now, the world is listening to both at the same time, and if you're new here, that's exactly why it feels so confusing. See, when things get shaky, people don't just stop caring about innovation, they just start respecting stability again. That's why gold shows up when everyone starts worrying about inflation or the global economy. Let's be honest, gold isn't exactly exciting. It's more like that old reliable jacket you pull out of the closet when it starts to rain. It's familiar, and when the world feels messy, familiar is exactly what people want. But Bitcoin? It's responding to a completely different kind of stress. It's not just looking at inflation, it's looking at who we trust and how much control we actually have over our own money. It's not just a hedge against rising prices, it's a hedge against systems that feel stuck in the past. So, when you see gold going up, don't think for a second that Bitcoin failed. It just means people are preparing for different risks at the same time. One is for surviving the storm, and the other is for building what comes after it. Another misconception beginners often have is that gold is something only older generations care about, while Bitcoin belongs exclusively to younger people. That used to be mostly true, but it is no longer accurate. Today, you will find plenty of younger investors who own both, not because they are confused, but because they have realized that different assets protect you from different problems. Bitcoin protects you from being stuck in a system you cannot escape, and gold protects you from a system slowly losing credibility. These are not the same problem, and pretending they are leads to bad conclusions. There's also a very practical reason gold feels so strong right now, and it has absolutely nothing to do with hype. In fact, it's the opposite. Central banks have been quietly hoarding gold, not because it's exciting, but because it's neutral. Gold doesn't belong to any one country. It doesn't default, and it doesn't care about a government's promises. It's basically the unbothered king of assets. That kind of boring reliability starts looking really attractive when global cooperation starts to feel, well, a bit fragile. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is finally growing up. It's not that weird internet experiment your cousin was rambling about 10 years ago. It's maturing. We're talking real infrastructure, actual regulations, and big institutions finally paying attention. We're finally moving past the magic internet money phase and starting to understand exactly what Bitcoin is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. People also love to say gold is outdated because it's physical, slow, and, let's face it, kind of inconvenient. But honestly, that's exactly why it works. You can't turn gold off, and you definitely can't change its supply with a software update. It just exists. On the flip side, people say Bitcoin is too risky because it's new, it's volatile, and half the world still doesn't understand it. But that is exactly the point. Bitcoin exists to challenge systems that rely on trust and permission. It's built for a world that doesn't want to ask for a green light anymore. At the end of the day, calling one better than the other is like arguing whether fire is better than water. It depends entirely on which problem you're trying to solve. Sometimes you need to stay warm, and sometimes you're just thirsty. There's also a pretty big cultural gap between the two. Bitcoin culture is loud, it's opinionated, and it's borderline obsessed with the future. Gold culture, it's the opposite. It's quiet, skeptical, and obsessed with not losing what already exists. It's the difference between the guy shouting about Mars and the guy making sure the front door is double locked. Neither side is wrong, though. They just attract different personalities. And what's really interesting is that the longer people stay in the markets, the more they stop picking sides and start choosing balance. That's not because they suddenly became boring. It's because they've learned the hard way how fragile certainty really is. Gold being strong right now is a reality check. It's a reminder that the world isn't nearly as stable as it pretends to be. And the fact that Bitcoin exists at all? That's a sign that people are no longer satisfied with the old answers. The thing is, these two ideas don't have to fight. They can coexist. Bitcoin isn't here to replace gold overnight, and gold isn't here to block technological progress. They're just answers to two very different questions. Bitcoin asks, what if money worked without needing anyone's permission? And gold asks, what if everything else fails? Honestly, those are both valid questions to ask. If you're new to investing, your biggest takeaway shouldn't be about picking a winner. It's about understanding why people are choosing them in the first place. At the end of the day, markets aren't just spreadsheets and flashing numbers. They are reflections of fear, hope, trust, and uncertainty. Right now, gold is telling us the world is feeling cautious, and Bitcoin is telling us people are ready for a transformation. And the best part, neither one needs the other to fail to make sense. The real story here isn't some Bitcoin versus gold boxing match. The real story is that people are just trying to protect themselves in a world that feels less predictable by the hour. Some do that with code, some do that with metal, many do it with both.